Greetings, everyone. Here are the main points of the video. Gunfire reported in Thuonglu, Moscow. Military fired on Thuonglu Avenue, Rublio, Dubliovka. National Guard activated emergency riot prevention plan. And the extreme fear in the face of the wave of social protest. A historic turning point in the air and in the military high command. The air battle where the F-16 shot down the Soviet Sukhoi fighter jet. And the reason why the appointment of 43-year-old Major General Mikhailo Lopati has caused the Russian hawks to panic. The silent logistics war and the war of attrition on infrastructure. Hundreds of thousands of square meters of Wildberries warehouses have turned to dust. The G28 supply line has not been strangled, with more than 10,000 supply vehicles destroyed. With the shadow fleet's collapse in the Black Sea. The secrets behind the deaths in the long silence. The VIP director at Sheremetyevo Airport acted strangely. The last witness related to Prigozhin's flight has been silenced. A sudden attack from all sides. 3 regions enable Europe to end Russian energy dependence. Lukashenko expelled officials from the border conflict in the 18-year-old private guard team of the Kadyrov family in Krozy. Welcome to the analysis program of Luan Banshin-Su. Before we get into the details, please take a few seconds to like the video and subscribe to the channel so we can continue. Thank you, dear viewers. Gunfire right in the upscale Moscow area. The Russians are turning their backs and opposing the war. Ladies and gentlemen, the foundation of power at the Kremlin is facing unprecedented structural cracks. When the earthquake of war devastates not just distant front lines, but also penetrates deep into Russian society. From silent protests targeting the media watchdog, Roskomnadzor, to the tense and strained atmosphere in Moscow, the control apparatus is struggling to hold on. The Russian Federal Security Service, FSB, continues to play a key role in maintaining strict repression, while the National Guard forces, Rosgvardia, are also involved. They are stepping up efforts to address the risk of public riots. Even though the Kremlin is quietly planning large-scale military mobilization options, the fear of a wave of public outrage still haunts Russian strategists like a looming specter. Internal unrest has escalated to an alarming level. Even in Rubliovka, the most elite upper-class area, terrifying gunshots have rung out. Army officers, in a state of military frenzy, fired a hail of bullets from the windows of the military dormitory at innocent passersby. This is a sign of psychological breakdown within the ranks of the Russian armed forces. Internationally, Moscow's isolation has become even more severe, as President Ilham Aliyev of Azerbaijan publicly made statements mocking the Kremlin. At the same time, this opens up a strategic opportunity for Europe to completely end its dependence on Russia. Meanwhile, on the home front, Russia's domestic economy is witnessing the mass collapse of small and medium-sized businesses. The wave of bankruptcies has wiped out billions of dollars in equity, and the direct trigger is Ukraine's drone strike campaign. 2 strategic warehouses belonging to the giant e-commerce platform Kybris in the Krasnodar and Stavropol regions have been destroyed and completely burned down. Combined with the Elektroto Logistics Center, which was attacked earlier, this giant has lost nearly 500,000 square meters of storage space. This disaster has jolted Russian business people awake to the impasse. They broke down in tears at the sight of their accumulated goods. A lifetime's work turned to ashes in the blink of an eye. They openly voiced their complaints, demanding an immediate end to the special military operation. However, in response to the people's suffering, Chairman of the State Duma Vyacheslav Volodin issued harsh threats of punishment against anyone who complains. Meanwhile, the Russian lower house continues to tighten its grip on social control. The collapse of these distribution centers is a fatal blow to the logistics infrastructure. Nationally, in the Russian economy, e-commerce has become a vital lifeline, where Wildberries holds 45% of the market share and, together with Ozon, dominates up to 77% of online transactions. The disruption of this supply chain pushes both the rear and the front lines into a severe logistics crisis. The occupying forces lose their supply of essential goods. Civilians in the rear face severe shortages and major disruptions. It doesn't end there. The ongoing war of attrition keeps hitting key energy infrastructure. An oil depot in Amarvar erupted in a fierce fire covering more than 800 square meters. On the occupied Crimean Peninsula, a precision strike hit the Yalta substation. This caused a widespread power outage, plunging the southern peninsula into darkness. On the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov, the operation to hunt down Russia's shadow fleet is underway on a brutal scale. In just 16 days of the campaign, 196 Russian transport and military ships have been neutralized or destroyed. Among them, the latest attack hit 13 vessels, including 1 oil tanker, 10 cargo ships, and 2 tugboats. The Kremlin's propaganda front is completely collapsing in the face of the harsh reality on the battlefield. Recently, Yevgeny Belitsky, the head of the Russian-installed administration in the occupied Zaporizhia region, reported an overly optimistic picture to Moscow. He asserted that energy facilities are still under control, the vital G28 highway connecting the mainland to Crimea is completely safe, and the effectiveness of Ukrainian drones has significantly decreased. However, actual statistics from the commander of Ukraine's unmanned systems forces have exposed those lies. Since July until now, more than 10,000 Russian logistics and supply vehicles have been destroyed right on the G28 route. In this area that is not fully controlled, Commander Robert Vopti, nicknamed Maria, has sent a strong message to the leadership. The Kremlin is reminded that this is the first large-scale war in history in which the Ukrainian people are no longer standing on the same front, but have become a resilient, united bloc determined to crush the invaders. In Belarus, leader Alexander Lukashenko, the person often referred to by the nickname Bumba Siza, is falling into a state of utter panic, venting his anger on incompetent officials by threatening to send them to the frontline trenches. Meanwhile, in Chechnya, Ramzan Kadyrov is taking the opportunity to increase his influence, strengthening his personal guard for his son, Adam Kadyrov. He is preparing his forces for a fierce power struggle that could break out at any moment if Moscow's upper leadership weakens. A historic turning point in the air and in the military leadership, especially the recent strategic shift in Ukraine's military leadership, is causing pro-war analysts in Russia to fall into a state of real panic. President Volodymyr Zelensky has just officially decided to replace the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian army, appointing Major General Mikhailo Rapati to replace General Oleksandr Zyukai. At the age of 43, Rapati is a typical example of a new generation general. He rose from the position of battalion commander, maturing through the toughest battles of this war. A general with deep combat experience and knowledge of the modern battlefield taking supreme command is a very dangerous sign for the opponent. For the Hawks at Moscow, this is not just a simple personnel change. It is the emergence of a strategic opponent with great courage. It promises to upend all of the Kremlin's military calculations in the upcoming brutal phase. The panic is clearly evident on Russia's hawkish propaganda channels. The decision to appoint Major General Mikhailo Rapati as the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian army is a symbolic turning point that delivers a powerful blow to the enemy's morale. Looking back at history in the spring of 2014, the BMP-2 armored vehicle was formed under the command of 31-year-old Captain Rapati, directly commanding the clearing of obstacles set by pro-Russian forces in Mariupol. He became a legendary symbol of resistance and unwavering spirit. This decade-long steadfastness and iron will have made the Kremlin hawks wary. They fear that this battle-hardened general will wage a determined war of attrition, refusing any compromise or negotiation. This transfer of power received unanimous support from Kiev's military elite. Former Commander-in-Chief Valery Zaluzny expressed his complete confidence. Minister of Digital Transformation Mikhail Fedorov called this a breath of fresh air, promising significant breakthroughs. He also acknowledged General Alexander Zyrik's historic contributions. During the defense of Kiev and the counteroffensive in Kharkiv, the nature of the war of attrition is entering a new, more brutal phase as the balance of air power begins to shift. For the first time since the full-scale conflict began, a direct aerial dogfight saw an F-16 fighter jet, piloted by a Ukrainian pilot, successfully shoot down a modern Russian Sukhoi fighter jet. The chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff publicly confirmed the information before Congress. This historic airstrike is clear evidence of the remarkable development of the multi-layered air defense system and the aerial combat capabilities that Kyiv has persistently built. The failure in the skies goes hand in hand with chaos and loss of control, right at the center of Russian power. Right on the expensive Dugliovskoy Avenue, gunfire broke out in Moscow's elite district right at military unit 83,466. This agency specializes in providing vehicles for the general staff and other central command agencies of Russia. Shots were fired at passers-by from the officer's dormitory window. Authorities found that a female soldier, in a disturbed mental state, was responsible. The National Guard then cordoned off the area. The mystery behind the deaths in the purge. At the same time, an atmosphere of fear about internal purges is hanging over Moscow, with the mysterious death of Alexei Kosenko, the 57-year-old former director of the VIP Business Aviation Terminal at Sheremetyevo Airport. This was the location of the final fateful flight of tycoon Yevgeny Prigozhin. Kosenko was suddenly dismissed about 3 weeks earlier. Then he was found hanging at his home, raising public suspicion about a ruthless cover-up campaign by the Kremlin to erase all traces related to historical witnesses. In the Kremlin, President Vladimir Putin is caught in a strategic dilemma. On one hand, he is eager to send tens of thousands of new recruits to the battlefield as cannon fodder. However, he fears a wave of public outrage. To prevent the risk of riots breaking out, National Guard Commander Viktor Zolotov has received urgent orders to develop special protection plans not only for strategic facilities, but also for the families of the National Guard officers, in case of civil unrest when a general mobilization order or a state of war is declared. The strict control of the Federal Security Service, FSB, is still being enforced to extinguish any spark of resistance. A typical example is the arrest of a civilian in the city of Chita, just because of some angry posts on Telegram calling for resistance against the internet censorship imposed by Roskomnadzor, including a forced, awkward apology video. While the Russian people have to stand in long lines all day, unable to buy even a drop of gasoline, and small businesses collapse as their warehouses turn to dust, the chairman of the State Duma, Vyacheslav Volodin, is again quick to call anyone who complains part of the fifth column or a traitor. Gunfire reported in an upscale part of Moscow. Russians are now turning against the war. The decline of life in society is most evident in the resort capital Sochi and in the Black Sea coastal region. A place that was once a source of pride for tourism has now turned into a scene scarred by war. The Russian Duma is increasing its ideological control, claiming it's for national security. Chairman of the State Duma Vyacheslav Volodin and the legislative apparatus do not hesitate to justify the suppression of freedom of speech, claiming that media freedom cannot be abused, and it is time to enact stricter laws to punish dissenting voices. The question on the political chessboard now is how much longer expressing dissatisfaction or voicing discontent about the state of the country will officially be considered a crime. In the face of such harsh censorship, independent media channels continue to serve as beacons of truth, calling for the support of the international community, seeking to reveal the hidden side of the Kremlin's war machine. In contrast to the heroic slogans about battlefield duty, the internal regions of the Russian Federation are witnessing stark division and privatization of the armed forces. According to an investigation by Novaya Gazeta Europe, the National Guard battalion named by Sanku Benoetsky was originally established under the pretext of serving in the war in Ukraine. It has now turned into an expensive personal gift that President of Chechnya, Ramzan Kadyrov, has given to his 18-year-old son. Adam Kadyrov is very different from the Sheikh Mansour battalion, which must go to the front lines and face war's dangers. The Sanku Benoetsky unit has advanced weapons, a modern barracks, and its own training ground, but is permanently stationed in the capital, Grozny. This elite force has actually become a private guard unit, ready to protect the Kadyrov family's hold on power against any political upheaval in Chechnya. The first blow targeting Moscow's energy dominance came from a neighboring country in the South Caucasus during a press conference held in Berlin. Together with the German leadership, President Ilham Aliyev of Azerbaijan dealt a critical blow to the Kremlin's geopolitical ambitions when he publicly exposed the weakness and breakdown of Russia's energy infrastructure, which is so depleted that it can no longer maintain a stable supply of gas and oil. Not missing this historic opportunity, Baku proactively proposed an alternative solution, ready to increase hydrocarbon exports to Europe, officially paving the way for the continent to completely eliminate its dependence on Russian energy sources. The panic and deadlock did not stop in Moscow. It also spread to their closest ally in Minsk, Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko. He made an extremely bizarre punitive decision, but it was full of confusion. He sent a series of incompetent officials who failed to fulfill their duties straight to the trenches on the southern border with Ukraine. Lukashenko, instead of issuing warnings or discipline, told Okumenko to gather the underperforming officials. He made them do a week of crash training, gave them machine guns and grenade launchers, and sent them into the muddy forest, with the hope that they would obey the command authority of the Special Operations Forces. Although they claimed this step was to bolster internal security and not target anyone, sending the administrative management team to the front lines revealed the Minsk authorities' panic and confusion amid rising instability. At the same time, on the Western power chessboard, the intertwining of sports and politics once again reveals itself through suspicious relationships. Former U.S. President Donald Trump did not hesitate to express his desire to have FIFA President Gianni Infantino become the next Secretary General of the United Nations, citing Infantino's global influence and special ability to connect people. However, behind those flattering words are a series of scandals, as the head of the world's football governing body has been accused of repeatedly indulging Trump's demands. A typical example is bypassing all legal procedures to lift the ban on an American player right before the playoff match. This mutual support reflects a bitter reality about how major international institutions are being influenced by calculations of personal interests and political power. In the end, the false picture of a thriving Russian economy under sanctions has been completely exposed when comparing the Kremlin's statements with the reality of daily life. While Moscow strategists keep praising the import substitution policy and claim that the withdrawal of Western brands only makes Russia more self-reliant, the few Russian travelers who manage to get past the Iron Curtain know otherwise. When they set foot in shopping centers in Poland, they are left astonished. They are amazed to see familiar stores like Stradivarius, Pull&Bear, or Bershka, brands that have completely disappeared from Russian territory, reveal a bitter truth. The thirst for goods and the backwardness in consumption are pushing Russian people further away from the civilized world. So in your opinion, does the appearance of the young but experienced General Mikhailo Dopati, along with the F-16s beginning to make their mark, constitute a decisive turning point in the war between Russia and Ukraine?
Không.